I'm Josh Allen, and welcome to the Baked In Podcast, where I sit down with industry innovators to uncover the unique ideas and values that are baked into their businesses and have led to extraordinary success. This podcast is presented by Busey Bank. Since Busey opened their doors in 1868, they've upheld a pledge to foster customer relationships and vibrant communities, embodying a legacy of partnership and progress. With multiple lines of business, Busey provides a range of financial solutions tailored to your needs. From digital banking to planning for retirement, Busey is here to help you achieve your financial goals. Busey Bank, building business, growing wealth since 1868. Today's guest is someone who doesn't just cook food, he crafts experiences. After nearly 2 decades working in acclaimed kitchens across the country and the globe, from Belgium to Blue Hill at Stone Barns, Chef Alec Schingel has finally gone solo, and he's doing it with intention. His brand new fine dining concept, Robin Restaurant, just opened its doors in the heart of Maplewood, Missouri, bringing what he calls fine comfort to the table. Think elevated Midwest cuisine with zero pretension and total purpose. But what does it actually take to go from idea to brick and mortar? What are the real leadership and business decisions behind building a restaurant from scratch? Not just the food, but the systems, the space, the people. Today, Alec joins us to talk about the 18-year journey that led to this moment, the hurdles of opening his own place, the metrics he's using to define success, and why obsessing over every detail, from warm bread to water refills, isn't just hospitality, it's strategy. Let's roll. So we had a great experience.
Thank you.
You know, part of my research, I felt compelled to get in. My wife's had some medical stuff. That was actually the first date night we had in almost, what would it have been? It had almost been 7 or 8 weeks or something.
Okay.
So, knock on wood, she's doing well.
That's
and
good.
she was thrilled to go out.
Sorry to hear about your wife and the medical things, but glad you guys were able to come and have a.
And it was a total surprise to her because she had no idea that you would open. Like, she didn't know anything about it. So it's nice. It's hard when we're in the industry to surprise her with a new location. But I was talking to Summer, your pastry chef, and who I've known forever. She said that you might be a little bit nervous about the podcast this morning. So I decided that's good. Yeah. But I thought we would start with a little rapid fire just to sort of ease into the whole thing and sort of see how we go. So first thing that you do every day when you walk into Robin?
Ovens on. Lights on, ovens on.
So it's taking care of the space and not yourself, huh?
Yeah, pretty much, yeah.
One ingredient that you couldn't live without?
Onions.
Biggest pet peeve when dining out?
Ooh, that's it. I don't have a good one. I would say just rude service.
Okay.
Yeah.
Late night snack after a late shift?
Pizza.
Yeah. Okay. What's harder, perfecting the perfect dish or building a team?
Oh, the team. 100% team.
Okay. If you weren't a chef, what would you be doing?
I would love to be a play-by-play announcer for a baseball team.
Nice.
Yeah.
Most overused phrase in the restaurant industry?
For us, that's fair, but it is what it is.
Okay. What's your favorite spot to eat in St. Louis besides your own restaurant?
I'll not say my own house because that doesn't count either.
And you've worked for some great chefs, so I don't want to put you on the spot.
Yeah, I mean, I don't go there as much as I used to. I would say Union Loafers, probably. Okay. Yeah.
Music playing in the kitchen right now?
None,
ever?
Yeah. Not usually, no. Okay. Yeah.
And then one word to describe how you felt on opening night.
Thankful, I'd say. Yeah, like a lot of just gratitude.
Which is a perfect transition, actually.
Cool.
I ended there because you spent nearly 2 decades in the industry before you decided to open your own place.
Well, that's kind of true. I spent roughly 5 years before I knew, like, okay, I want to get to the point where I can open my own place. But it took me a 10 to 12 year journey to actually do it. So I kind of knew by the time I was at Niche, like, okay, this is, I have the skill set. I feel like this is where I want to lead towards. Or like I had that drive to go, okay, this is an industry that I want to stick into.
And that was 5 years in. You
Yeah,
probably.
probably. Yeah.
So then what took so long?
It was a lot of things, really. I mean, it was the easiest answer is money and business acumen, and it's the fact that it's just a notoriously hard business model in terms of the margins. Your inventory goes bad every 2 weeks. You know, your labor turns over every 3 months to every, you know, maximum 2 years. Like you're not going to be able to sign on, you know, an engineer at Spotify that's going to stick with you for 12 years or 15 years and grow to become your chief technology officer. Like that's not a common thing. You know what I mean? If you've got an industry partner that stays for 5 to 10 years, that's a long haul in a restaurant group or a restaurant, you know, period. So, you know, the combination of being from a family that, you know, we weren't particularly entrepreneurial, at least, you know, my immediate family. My father worked in IT. My mom was a teacher. Not a lot of my aunts and uncles were naturally entrepreneurs. A lot of like more kind of, I said, teachers or accountants on my uncle's side, or sales, or various kind of things. But so the idea of kind of hanging up my own, you know, sign and going into business wasn't a path that I kind of saw as a regular thing. I knew people did it. I knew, you know, that was a thing to do. But from my perspective,
you were an economics major at SIU Carbondale.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, exactly.
So at that moment, was the restaurant industry even in the forefront at that point? You then chose to go to culinary school, right?
Yeah. So yeah, economics was a good choice based on, like, I was a good-ish student, and I was a reasonably smart guy with zero skill sets in any other thing. So like, if I had been skilled at, you know, wood shop or landscaping or anything else, I, you know, probably could have done that, but I had no skills in anything. So it was like, well, you got to go to college. Like that's what you're, you know, you do. So I picked a state college that my dad had gone to and my mom had initially gone to before she transferred to the U of I, and it was just away from my town. So I grew up in Champaign-Urbana, which is where the University of Illinois was. So I wanted to get away from there. So, cooking kind of began after college. I think, like most people, I, you know, ran into kind of a buzzsaw of like, oh, I've got to go figure out life now, and I've got to find a career, and I don't know what that means, and I don't know what to do. So moved back home and, you know, found a job eventually, working in an office, working with a company that was selling insurance, and just was like, this is not the shape of the life I want to have at 22 years old. So I had been fascinated by the world of cooking just for myself in college, just to try to impress girls mostly, like always,
right.
Or, you know, cook for my friends or cook for myself. And moved back home and just kind of started cooking for my family pretty regularly. And it got to a point where I was like, you know what? I think this is worth exploring. I think that, you know, I can go back to go to law school at 28 or 29, or go to grad school at 30. Like going to culinary school as a 30, 40-year-old is just hard. You know, it's a young person's, you know, career. It's a young person's sport. Exactly. So knowing that, like, I kind of had a shorter window to give this a try first and figure out if this had any, you know, real future, or if this was just like a fun thing to try for a few years. Be like, yeah, I was a cook for, you know, and then I moved on and did something else. Like I said, it was pretty much, you know, a year or so into Niche when I was just kind of like, okay, like, I think I'm going to be here for a while.
So I can't remember the timing. Were you at Niche when it was in Benton Park, or when it was in
both?
After both, you were part of the transition to
exactly. So I'm going to get the years wrong a little bit, but roughly speaking, I moved here in 2007, went to culinary school. First job was at the Chase Park Plaza for about 3 years. Worked through like every single kitchen there, including ones that don't exist anymore. And I, you know, by the time I moved, you know, Niche had only actually been here for a couple years before me, but very quickly it was the talk of the town. You know, Gerard's picture was on Sauce magazine, And I kind of mythologized that restaurant. You know, it was like, oh my God, you know, niche restaurant. You know, so that became the spot to me that was the most compelling and most interesting place, even more than like Tony's, which is probably even the more like revered restaurant, really, and more mature, you know, kind of fully realized restaurant. But like it wasn't as cool at the time as what Gerard was doing, you know. And yeah, I just remember getting to a point like, you know, most people where, you know, the job I had was starting to kind of go stale. And I happened to look at I think Craigslist, and there was a job posting for niche, and I was shocked because I was like, they can't possibly be needing cooks. Like everybody wants to work there. But there it was. It was like, you know, niche St. Louis looking for cooks. So, you know, ran down there, dropped off my resume, chatted with Gerard for 5 seconds, you know, and Nate for a little bit. Got a stage the next day, and then like a day or so after that, got an offer. This would have been maybe 2010, 2009, something like that. But yeah, roughly speaking, I was there for a year at the space in Benton Park, and then about a year or so in the new space. So my time was pretty evenly split for about 2 to 2.5 years between the old and the new. So, yeah.
And into that experience, a couple of years later, is when the bug hit. Like, this is something that I want to do for myself.
Well, I mean, I knew that I was really enjoying what I was doing with the Chase Park Plaza, and I was really progressing along. I think that at the time it was so big, and I was so far away from independent restaurants that it was like, okay, I'm still figuring things out. And the first 2-3 months of niche, I genuinely thought I was going to get fired like any moment. Like I didn't think I was good enough. You know, I was slower. I was, you know, it was just hard. It was just a really, really hard kitchen. And, you know, it was an interesting place because looking back, it wasn't to me a toxic kitchen at all, but it was a very demanding one, and it required a lot of attention to detail, and all of you just had to show up and give your all, you know, from usually 10 a.m. until, you know, we closed at 11 midnight. And you were responsible for keeping on track of your ordering and your station. And then when everything was done, you had to jump up in the hoods and clean everything. And like, we had porters at the hotel, you know, we were a 40-hour a week, you know, like we had prep cooks, we had a whole commissary kitchens. And so you just kind of showed up and here's your lobster, cook it. And this, you know, was fine. And all of a sudden we're doing everything from scratch. And if you run out because you didn't tell chef that like, hey, we need to order more, you know, of this for the pappardelle or this for that, then, you know, you're in trouble, and you're truly treating your station like a miniature restaurant. So the amount of kind of just figuring things out for the first 3 or 4 months was really hard. And at some point, luckily, I just kind of clicked a little bit, and I found my way. And I want to say it was about, you know, 6 or so months after that then I got a call into the private room, and Gerard made me sous chef. And that was when I was like, okay, I think I've got game now. Like, this is the most like validating thing that like I could have had at the moment. And of course it then was extremely hard again after that, like the hardest thing again. But it was kind of one of those like, okay, if I can have this person that I've kind of had this admiration for, work for, you know, 9 to 10 months, say like, hey, I'm going to make you a manager at my flagship. It was like, okay, there might be something to this. I can maybe start to get over my imposter syndrome and feel like, yeah, okay, I can do this. I can hang here. So, yeah.
So then you spend a few more years there, and then you sort of go on this sort of world tour.
Yeah.
Is that how we're going to call it?
Sure. Yeah, let's call it that. My wandering years. Yeah, that was.
But that was all. But but you've now made the decision that somewhere in the back of your mind, I need to figure out how to do this for myself eventually. And so I'm going to go travel the world, or travel the country and a little bit in Europe to see how to do this. Yeah,
basically. I mean, I think at the time I knew that the next step from being a sous chef at a great restaurant was being the guy, you know, and working, you know, for the year or so I did next to Nate Hereford, recognizing like, oh, there's really still a big chasm and a big gap that I have to cross over in terms of my skill sets, my maturity, all these things to where I was at the time, 12, 13 years ago as a sous chef, to where Nate was as, the chef de cuisine. And really, I think, and I mean, Gerard would probably back this up. Nate was, incredibly talented and incredibly mature in that kitchen. And Gerard really relied on him enormously, even when he had, the title just CDC and eventually became executive chef. Like, Gerard was building an entire group of restaurants, whether it be Pastaria or Pirano eventually. And, there was a lot of faith and a lot of trust placed into how kind of rock solid Nate was in running that kitchen. And I think, I did a fair assessment to me of myself and of the food scene as it existed at the time, and kind of realized, well, I didn't want to stray terribly far from this kind of, progressive seasonal cooking that Niche does. So to me, the only other kind of thing that made sense would be like, well, when Taste Bar has an opportunity, that's such an interesting restaurant. And Matt Doaday at the time was, Matteo was crushing it over there and had really no inclination to leave. Michael Petrus was at Brasserie, and he was kind of rock star over there. And again, talking to Nate, he was really going to be there for the long haul. So it was just like, well, I don't know that there's really anywhere for me to go within the city of St. Louis to like keep learning and keep pushing and keep kind of progressing my skill set beyond where I'm kind of at. But also recognizing that if I was really, really, really honest with myself, if Nate got a call from somebody saying, hey, here's, a ton of money, come out, we want you, and suddenly Niche was available, did I think Gerard would see me as being like mature enough and have the skill set to take in a Nate's job? And I kind of, maybe I was wrong, but I kind of went and said, I wouldn't hire me. I don't think I would.
Right.
Like I
Which
think
takes a level of maturity and
Yeah.
humility, certainly.
And I think, the reality was I spent 3 years at the Chase Park Plaza and a year with him. So like, a year and a half. So it was like, I just didn't think I had the skill set or the experience level to jump in there and lead that restaurant to where it needed to go and where it would have, gone eventually, in terms of, winning a James Beard and all the accolades and such that, had come and had yet to come. So yeah, it was to me recognizing I needed to do more, and I just felt like with the opportunities that were immediately available at the time, it meant me leaving St. Louis. So
when you go to these
Yeah.
other places, you're in South Carolina, you go to Belgium, I think, you
Yeah.
go to New York eventually.
Yep.
How do you approach those opportunities in those situations when what you're really trying to do is, in the back of your head, build your own skill set, right? Like you're not necessarily going in there for a job or even for a stage. I mean, you have a very specific agenda.
Yeah.
How does that work when you go in and talk to these folks, or how did that play out?
So genuinely, it started with me just paying attention to the people that I admired that were really interested in food and loved food. And I know this is going to be the least cool thing I say, but the group of food bloggers that were writing about food, particularly like the Ulterior Epicure, A Life Worth Eating. There's a blog called, I think, Adam Eats, that a lot of them aren't really working as much anymore, but they were like really the first wave of food bloggers that still are out there going to worldwide 3 Michelin star places. I think Bonjoing Lee runs Ulterior Epicure now, primarily works as like a photographer and like photojournalist, working within the food, kind of media per hire because of just how good his photography was. And like going and just staying tuned in to the places that they were going to, that they were like, oh my God, this is next level. These are the people that kind of found Faviken before, he blew up. They found Saizan, they found Joshua Skeen's restaurant in San Francisco, which has now been 3 Michelin stars and one of the most expensive places. But they found it and were eating there when it was kind of just technically a pop-up. They hadn't found their full-on permanent location, and I don't even think they had a Michelin star yet. And they were going, this guy's work is insane. Like, you've got to see what this guy's doing. So following those kind of people and seeing the interesting things that were happening led me to like 2 or 3 of these people that to me were doing really fascinating, interesting work as chefs and as restaurateurs, but hadn't really reached the stage of like discovery the way that like, you know, Thomas Keller had at the French Laundry. Like everybody kind of knew about the French Laundry. Everybody kind of knew about Daniel Boulud. And I was like, I'm a guy in St. Louis. Like, I'm not going to get that job. Like, a billion people want that job. But, you know, not everybody knows how cool what's happening in McCrady's is with Sean Brock and the stuff that he's doing. Like, Michelin hasn't gone there yet. And yes, he's gotten some cool articles, and there's like Garden and Gun, and of course, everybody seems to know about him now. But like 14 years ago, it was still a little bit, you know, under the radar. So it was me finding.
So was the food and what they were doing with the food the driving factor? Because you still have to think about, especially as an econ major, like you still have to think about are these guys building a viable, sustainable business, right? Like there's one thing to do really cool shit with food in a pop-up environment. There's another thing to be able to build a team, hire a team, sustain a team, pay people a living wage, do the things that I know that you want to do as a business owner. So how do you balance those two things that you're looking out at, or where you were at the time? It was all about, I just got to go experience food. If I can figure the food thing out, I think the rest of it will take care of itself.
So, you know, I would say the wandering years was about that kind of graduate degree and seeing as many things food-wise to be able to be prepared to then when I kind of came back and ended up at Vicia. And it was like with the team at Vicia and with the team at Winslow's that it was still, you know, limited. So I don't want to overstate my, you know, impact or my importance there, but more so just to think that, you know, Michael and Tara were kind of letting us into the building, you know, months before it was there, like months when we were building it out. And there, we knew who the management team was, and you've interviewed, you know, several of them. You know, you talked to Tara before. And it's like, I hadn't really gotten that access before. Like even when we built out the space in Clayton with Niche, like I didn't have that kind of access to where
you were still in Benton Park running the restaurant, or
well, even when we were just laid off, like it was just Gerard was just like he was just handling it.
Right.
He was really taking care of it, and it just felt like suddenly, even if I didn't see their business plan or anything, I was more aware of like, oh, this is how this works. This is the process of like. I knew from them doing pop-ups that like they got a real estate agent and they were looking at spaces and they were trying to find something that would be a good fit. And it took some time before they found the place in the Cortex, and then the build out and who you talk to for like, who do you like, I just didn't even have an inkling of where you go and what's the process for like starting a restaurant. And by the time I got to there, and then, you know, you get forward to Winslow's, and then later on even working with like the Vandy, you get to the point where I'm now, where like I've seen kind of 4 or 5 different openings in different styles, where like with Niche, it was a reopening in a totally new space. With Vicia, it was a complete grand opening that I was a part of. It was with, you know, Winslow's, a kind of reimagining of a space with a totally new management team and ownership team, but still kind of inheriting this, you know, this pretty, you know, set in space and the set in culture and the set in kind of established identity of what they are, with us tweaking it. So by kind of having all of these different experiences throughout my career, and it, like I said, it kind of started with Niche, you know, reopening, and then the most kind of, you know, with each step, it was different, but it also gave me a little bit more access to like, how does this work? And
sure. I mean, it's funny because I say a lot to people, like if I knew now what I didn't know then, and I was 24 when I opened the bakery, would I even fucking do it again? And like, I don't know that I would do it. So it's fascinating to me to sit here with you, who's had 18 years of experience, who's gone through all of that, and you still then pushed your chips into the center of the table, right? Because like, there's a huge, I remember growing up with my grandfather, and it was one thing that he always said to me. He said, there's people that play with their own nickels and there's people that don't. Yeah. Like that's how he distinguished people. Like people that are willing to put their ass on the line and do it with their own money and their own thing and take the risk. And there's people who, they're all still good people, but they work for somebody, or it's not they don't have so much to lose.
Right.
And so you're successful in a career. You're 18 years in, you've been able to be a part of a lot of different really cool things.
Sure.
And yet you still, like, why? So why now? What was it the location in Maplewood that just became available? What pushed you over the edge now?
What pushed me over really was the exit at Winslow's and my time with that restaurant company, and how it felt like I was just on a situation of frustration primarily caused by the pandemic and caused by the circumstances that kind of caused, and the fact that like I had kind of knowingly done all these things that, you know, put myself into like challenging, you know, financial situations, challenging emotional situations, challenging, you know, economic or work situations or whatever. And that here I was in a, you know, place where I just, without insulting the restaurant, because it's great, like I just didn't feel satisfied with, you know, what I wanted to do. You know, when we had taken over Winslow's, we had a plan for dinner menus and a kind of all-day restaurant. And then, of course, you know, the idea that we were coming in and we were going to change things. And, you know, some of the people may not love it. And we're going to hopefully get enough new people with great new reviews and this, not whatever. And by the time the pandemic hit 3 months in, everything just became about survival. And I'm sure, you know, for everybody, you know. So it became, oh, actually, this restaurant has an established clientele that expects and wants these things. Okay, like we need to deliver that. Like we need to keep the lights on. We need to keep everybody employed. I need to make sure that I'm hitting numbers for my owner so that they're like able to keep me. It just became about like, how do I justify my existence in this restaurant to keep things going? So, you know, as soon as there's an opportunity to, you know, have a big takeaway thing for, you know, Mother's Day, absolutely. We're building pot pies and we're building this, and then Thanksgiving, of course, all these things. So, so that was, you know, kind of an understood, hey, we got to survive this thing. And as restaurants started to come out and new people started coming out with new concepts that were really personal and really exciting, and I'm thinking of somebody like Nick Bogner opening like Indo, we were just kind of like still just doing the thing that we said we weren't going to do. We were not going to do the farmer's breakfast with just the egg and the toast and the choice of bacon or sausage. And now suddenly, like, that's just what we've become back again over like the last 2 years from survival. And I realized it ended up being that they had, you know, some things in the works to work on some new things with their restaurant group to expand. And it just was like a good time to kind of go separate ways.
Sure.
And I think that really was the beginning of like, oh, okay, like I know that there's not a good fit for me. I know that I'm not really satisfied with where I'm at right now. I'm going to go ahead and leave. And whether stupidly or not, I kind of just started saying it out loud, and I started kind of saying it to myself like, okay, I'm going to work on my own thing. Like instead of going and talking to any of the other number of great restaurants and great, you know, establishments and just taking another executive chef job or another job doing something closer to that, I was just like, nope, like I'm going to start doing pop-ups. I'm going to start doing this thing, and we're just going to try it. And, you know, it would be a lie to say that like it was just like we did this, and then we had a restaurant and it was done. It's like there was a lot of hiccups and a lot of fits and starts, and there was a whole nearly year after the last one before the restaurant opened. Like, you know, I mean, I'm running a consultant pop-up business, and there was no pop-ups for a year and 2 months. Like that's not good, right? So it's easy to look at that and say, oh, we're, you know, to feel like we're not kind of progressing in the way that we wanted to. So in hindsight, now that it's all here and we're done, it looks like it was all just an easy kind of road, but it really wasn't. And it was a really tough challenge to actually cross the finish line and get to a point where it's like, oh my God, I'm signing a lease now. Like I'm going to do this. Like I don't have a choice. I have to run a restaurant now. So, and that wasn't until November. That was, you know, nearly 11 months after my last pop-up. So
let's take a quick break.
Sure.
And then when we come back, I really want to let's get into the restaurant now. And
yeah.
I want to understand that even just getting it across the finish line and realizing that the finish line really is the starting line, right?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
Because now you're in it. So
yeah.
Did you know that businesses can help protect our planet with every sale? That's the idea behind 1% for the Planet, a global movement where companies pledge 1% of their top-line revenue to environmental causes. Since 2002, members have given nearly $700 million to nonprofits tackling critical issues like climate change, conservation, and food insecurity. At Companion Baking, we're proud to be a part of this mission in 2025. We're contributing through local partnerships, like donating $50,000 in baked goods to the St. Louis Area Food Bank and supporting regenerative agriculture through our partnership with ADM. Learn more about how 1% for the Planet is driving change at 1%fortheplanet.org. So what has felt entirely different or more intense when it's your own name, your own money, than all of those other transitions that you mentioned that you got to experience before doing Robin?
I think that's just it. I think that it's the very slight but kind of all-encompassing pressure of knowing you're no longer the guy that the guy counts on. You're the guy or the girl, whatever. I'm not trying to be sexist,
right.
But just you're the person. And I think that I prided myself for a lot of my career on being the person that could solve operational things, that could just kind of get plugged into any situation and be told hey, we're opening a restaurant in the Cortex and we're going to have a lunch program and we want to figure out bread. Can you go figure out bread? And the bread program at Vicia kind of started from scratch for me, never really doing bread before, but we figured it out. And so I took
but
a lot
an entirely different level of pressure than finding the bank and scouting a location and signing and learning what a damn lease, what you're getting yourself into.
For sure. So I think from a day-to-day basis, right now, as just an example, right now, I'm aware that lots of the ingredients that we've been really happy with the new spring menu stuff are kind of they just ended. And it's wow, that was the shortest spring ever. That really stinks. I can't get asparagus really, maybe too much longer. Maybe through this week we can figure it out. So it's it feels different when you're introducing a new dish that's gonna become judged so thoroughly that oh, this is it. This is mine now. This is my restaurant. This is my menu. There's only 9 dishes on the entire thing that are savory. I've got to really put my best foot forward, and that psychological element is different from when I was just working as an executive chef at Winslow's.
Well, sure, because now you're making payroll and you're doing the books and you're talking to vendor, you're doing all kinds of other things, and all of a sudden, oh my God, we're out of asparagus, or the season is over. It's a different level of time pressure because it isn't the only thing that you've been thinking about, which is what's next after the asparagus.
Yes, exactly.
So how do you balance all of those responsibilities with that pressure that you feel, but also delegating some of that or using your team to help you mitigate some of that, or is that that's what you're learning?
That's probably been one of the biggest challenges, and I would say I don't want to say failing, because I think we're not failing as a restaurant, but that's certainly been my biggest challenge, is in the fact that everything for this restaurant has been designed to be so personal to me, with me kind of wearing multiple hats as a manager of yes, being the owner, yes, being the chef, but I'm also I'm designing the wine list, and I'm the main person, thinking through what does the cocktail menu look like? What is, when we roll out this after dinner drinks idea, putting that together, thinking through, steps of service. So
and candidly, can I ask you a question? Is that it's not a huge place. So is that a control issue, or is that look, there's only so many people I can afford to have, and so I have to wear all of these hats because I can't hire at this point a beverage director or...
Yeah, it's a little bit of both. I'll be honest. It's a little bit of both, and I think that there is going to continue to be an evolution of that. So for me, for an example, it's going to be hard for me to take away, ultimate control over the menu of such a small place. but it's really, really nice having somebody, in our pastry chef who brings their ideas fully formed, that I can kind of just be like, a conversation, what looks good, what's coming in. I think
that
this
baked
makes
Alaska, by the way, was out of this world.
Yeah, I mean, it's such a showstopper. Right. It's so great. It's such a fulfilling thing having a chance to have like no worries at all that the pastries are just gonna deliver and probably be a highlight of the meal every single time. And it's also a lot of pressure that like, oh, I've got to up my game to make sure that like that doesn't feel like a disjointed thing. Like we've got to really deliver for first course, second course, third course as well too. So anyways.
You got to figure out where to spend the money on talent, right? Like it's no different than a baseball team.
Yeah.
I mean, in some respects, there's a salary cap.
Right.
The business model tells me that this is what I can spend. So
that's exactly right. That's a salary cap's a great example, especially coming from watching sports a lot, and anybody that's done fantasy leagues or whatever. You got so many draft things, and it's the same idea. So I think for me, the next few steps are recognizing that service is but by service I mean like more particularly like a service professional and a hospitality professional as a general manager is like the thing that I need to really delegate the most, because it's just like the thing that I have the least experience with, and I've kind of, by virtue of not being able to kind of get somebody that I had experience working with before, which I really wanted, and just like the partly the financial situations, we kind of essentially opened without a general manager. Like I'm the only manager there. So we spent a lot of time training. We spent a lot of time doing as many things as we could to talk through how do we describe dishes, how do we talk about the general philosophy of how we do service, which we talk a lot about, like dropping breadcrumbs, where I don't want us to be standing at a table kind of lecturing people about the origins of like where the potato dish came from or this and that, because like some people don't care. Right. Some people just there to have a nice time.
It's not Portland.
Celebrate their anniversary and like carry on, move on. But having that kind of philosophy to like drop a breadcrumb here and there and see who picks it up, who responds, who's like, oh, what does that mean? Or where does that come from? And then we engage. So, talking through a lot of my strong opinions about how I see service going is juxtaposed with the fact that like I haven't spent much time in my life on the floor, really actively as a service professional. I've almost always been back of house. I do actually have a lot of experience doing wine, just kind of under the radar, because I've got a sommelier certification, and I spent a lot of time with the Vandy before during pop-ups and SL Barkeep, working with their cocktail team and working with Pat Joya, and so I knew in terms of that stuff I have a skill set that can hang. But yeah, so it's about managing certainly the team.
Has it been hard finding the professionals to deliver such a well curated like thought of service in your head? Because you're also it's a very small space, so you're in the room. You see how it's being handled. You have to have both eyes on front and both eyes in back. Obviously,
right.
Not an easy thing to do.
No, yeah.
Has the team been hard to build?
I mean, yes and no. I mean, the reality is like the team that I have is great. Like I think that's the first thing to say is like we have a great team and the people we have are fantastic. The challenge is that because we're not a restaurant group and because we are, on a Friday, Saturday night, 9 people, I've got, 8 people besides myself. All it takes is one person and we're down by 12-15% of our labor force. If one person is not feeling well or has an opportunity with another situation to go here, or just anything in life happens, we're really, really not having the flexibility that you have when you have a place like, Olive and Oak, and you've got O&O Pizza and Clover and the Bee and their whole, catering operation, that if a server is not here, there's almost always certainly somebody that can like fill in or cover, shifts.
And you're open 5 days a week, so you have it's one shift, one group. So it's not like there's somebody who's off who you can call in, or
there's a couple. We have one bartender who primarily works Fridays and Saturdays, because we're just busier that week, and he's been a great hospitality professional to show up and fit in really, really well, knowing that like on a Tuesday we're a lot slower and he can pick up shifts other places in town. But yeah, so that, to me, that's the biggest challenge, is the fact that we're just kind of hanging on a thread in terms of if anything happens, then we've got to kind of go back to kind of finding somebody that can start in. But at the same time, you don't have the sheer number of shifts to just kind of have a well of talent that's just kind of waiting in the wings for you. Like so that's to me the toughest balance, is recognizing that like I want to have like 10% more people working for me and have the flexibility to have them the 3 to 5 days that I want, but that's just not possible. Like that's that's in an economic model, that would work great, but from a personal, like people need to work. People need to have jobs. People need to be able to.
Yeah, I mean, we're in the cafe business, and 90% of our revenue comes between 11:30 and 1. And so, wouldn't it be great to have 10 people walk in for an hour and a half and work lunch and then go
Absolutely,
home?
That's exactly right. But that's just not practical. So, like I said, from like building it from an economic model, that would be amazing if I could have all people that were like, yeah, I'll work any 3 to 5 days a week. Like.
So, what have you prioritized building the team as you think about, in order to bring this vision of yours? What did you prioritize in terms of hiring? What's important to you in the as a leader? What are the important characteristics that you looked for in team members?
So I think that there was a certain it factor of being a person who was really just dedicated to restaurants and hospitality, beyond it just being kind of a clock in, I'm good at this and it's a job and I'm done. Like, to the point where, as part of the interview process, I would say like, hey, what are you cooking for your family? Like what gets you excited? What are you doing on your off days? If I'm hiring a cook, like if you've got to have, friends and over for a barbecue or for a dinner party, whatever, like what are you making? What are the things that get you excited? Or vice versa, if you're, a front of house person, like, what's your direction that you're going? Are you cocktailing? Are you putting together a whole spread on your, dining room table? Like, talk to me about this sort of thing. And it gives me an idea of are they the sort of people that even on our off days, we're like reading through cookbooks and we're watching things on Instagram and oh my God, that looks so cool. And like, just there's a different type of person that just loves this stuff,
right.
And we just love it. And if you aren't wired that way, it's hard when the other 8 of us are, and we just care about it so much. So I think that's important.
Yeah, and it's hard. I mean, being in the industry, it's hard to have 30% of your people be that way. And so especially in a small environment, to try to get that number up to 70, 80, 90% of your folks to be obsessives. It's super important.
For sure. And yeah, to say that they're nearly as obsessive as I am or as everybody else is not really, fair or accurate. But like, so there's that. The other one was like, what books are you reading? So just to me, having a person who is expresses some curiosity to the world and the world around them beyond food, whether it be about, really getting into sports or fantasy, worldcraft building or video games or in management or in, botanicals and gardening or just anything, but just showing more, just intellectual curiosity about things and just having hobbies and just being a mind at work was important to me. And then the last thing is so hard to find, and I can't say that like I think I've lucked into having a really good team that fits a lot of these things, but it's that lesson that Danny Meyer talks about, that 51%er, which is that like you just have to have people that are compassionate, that like care, and that's so hard to put into words really, and you can kind
You
of
can't interview for it. It's very hard to.
Yeah, I was gonna say you can't interview for it. You can't really like. You just kind of have to feel it out, and you kind of have to get lucky to a certain extent, and hope that the way I run the business and the way that I do things attracts the sort of people that I want to be working with, because we're such a small team. And I think that's part of it too, is that I had a bit of a meeting with my team. This would have been about a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, and I straight up kind of apologized to him, and I definitely cried a little bit, because I said this last month or so had been such a grind of this person's out, then that person's out, this person's out, that person's out, and that every single day for a lot of the kind of after the honeymoon period, you show up and you're just like looking at a list of 14 things I have to do just to survive, to get through the day of a restaurant, and that's the 14 things that I have to do. That doesn't include the 14 other things that I'm neglecting that are
or you
important.
want to do.
Yeah, or that I want to do, exactly. And it was very clearly sapping the thing that was important that I apologize for, is it was just starting to sap the joy of being there and running my own restaurant, and being incredibly like thankful for being in this industry and being in hospitality, that like it was clearly having an effect on the morale of the team, and me being aware enough that like, oh, I ultimately am like not just the captain of the ship in terms of the strategies and procedures we have for our social media and getting people in, for ordering ingredients, or for setting up closing procedures or opening, the nuts and bolts and things, is also just how do you go about your day? Are you?
Well, you are the cheerleader.
That's exactly right. It's like, how are you showing up and excited that like, oh man, we got morels in from Ozark. It's the coolest thing when we get morels in, and now we get to put it on the chicken dish, and like we get to make that dish just like a little bit better and a little bit closer to what we like had wanted it to become when we first flipped the dish over and we couldn't quite get them in. And just showing up with the idea that every day you're going to be as genuinely joyful as you can, and about like the experience that we're creating in there, with it being shared with the guests and shared with us. It's all of us. It's myself, it's the cooks, it's the bartender, it's the servers, it's the server assistant, but it's also, and so we're all working in concert, but it's the guests too, and it's all this kind of weird dance that's happening. And it's all just about this idea of like, before we do anything else, before we worry about like, is the exact spoon correctly placed here, or was this cocktail thing exactly filled to the level that we need it to be, it's that, are we creating something beautiful? Are we creating something joyful that people are going to really leave and feel nourished with? And that's like, that became the, oh right, that's the thing, that's the thing to like not lose sight on, that like. And
you'll be reminding yourself of that for the next 30
years.
Exactly. I mean, we talk about it. We talk about it a lot. We'll say, we're just making bread. Like, you can create a lot of drama, you can create a lot of shit, but in the end, we're taking flour, water, and salt and making bread. You're just trying to create a joyful experience. From a leadership standpoint, as you think about your leadership style, what did you take with you from your previous experiences, and what did you leave behind? What were the things that you really wanted to make sure that you weren't?
Yeah, so I had a great lesson from Matt Doaday when he was a sous chef at Niche, where he said something to the effect of like, he was training me on hot apps and I was training somebody else, and he said something to the effect that like, whenever you're training something or somebody to take over what you're doing, like don't leave anything behind. And I can't paraphrase the exact phrases he said, but it was like, don't hold back giving them just absolutely every bit of knowledge you can that you've learned, because that person is going to then take on the entire institutional knowledge of this station, and they're going to come in with their having worked at this restaurant in San Francisco or this place in Chicago or this whatever, and the idea is they're going to learn everything has been accumulated as knowledge on hot apps at Niche, and then add their own, and they're going to say, oh well, when we were working at this place, whatever. So I think to me that's such a great lesson of recognizing that like, you just got to work ego free. You cannot have secret recipes. You can't have like an institutional like knowledge that exists as just mine on the side, and I'm going to keep this. Like knowledge becomes kind of this infectious like growth potential when it's just shared abundantly and shared as freely as possible, that like you just don't hold anything back. And sometimes people just like it's too much and you can't expect everybody to retain everything, but it's the idea that like if somebody wants to learn, or if I want to teach somebody something, there's nothing that I'm like, I'm going to wait till it's my own restaurant. I'm going to wait till it's this. It's like, no, you give them everything you can. The other thing that I learned as a more of a criticism to myself as I've gotten older and I've gotten, and I'm sure you've seen, and anybody else that'll come through here, it's been here for 18, 20 years will tell you, like, your management style just had to change because, 18, 20 years ago, you could be a lot more demanding, and there was just a bigger labor force of people. There was, 5 different culinary schools in St. Louis alone, and you could just be harder on people until you found somebody that was just willing to give everything for it. You're like, yeah, that's my person, right? And it doesn't work that way. Like now, we're flipped, and so we have to really be careful about cultivating talent and keeping them here and taking care of them and valuing, people that show up every day. And
yeah, the expectation that a 20-something-year-old's going to come in at 10 in the morning and work till midnight is not the same.
No, it's not the same. Exactly. And really, like,
and maybe it shouldn't be.
And that's the thing. It's like, it's so easy to be like, oh, back in my day. But it's like, part of me is like, man, I wish I'd have been able to have that kind of power to know that, like, I didn't have to work, 14, 15-hour days as a 23-year-old, whatever. But yeah, so anyways, to me, it became about this kind of checklist for myself, which is that, okay, let's say I'm rolling out a new dish, and let's say that I've got a cook that I'm showing the ropes for. I'm saying, okay, these are the sugar snap peas, and this is how we're, cleaning them. This is how I want them cut. This is how they're going to be blanched. This is how they're going to be picked up for the dish. And you go through each of the different steps. If there's a mistake that is taken place, how you handle mistakes that happen, to me, has changed a lot, because it used to be just that, like, oh, it's your fault. Like, you didn't care enough. You don't give a shit. You're not doing this. You're not doing that. And so to me, it became, okay, from my perspective, I know that I've got 14 different things that I'm trying to do. And if there was a mistake that was made, my first instinct is, okay, I didn't give you enough information to succeed. In some way, I let you down as a manager, as a teacher, to get the task fulfilled in the right way. So how do we go back and say, okay, where did I fail in terms of making sure that it was clear that this was an important part of this step, or this needs to be done exactly this way, and maybe just recognizing that, like, first mistake is kind of on me as, like, the manager and as the teacher and the leader. And then as you kind of get further down towards, like, the second or third, it becomes kind of more of a shared thing. And that's not to say that, like, now it's like we're at a problem, but it becomes, okay, like, it's not entirely all your fault, but it's a shared thing. It's like, are you not having the time to listen because of how I'm delivering this information, and various other things. So I think that was the biggest and easiest way to kind of ease people's fear from making a mistake. Like, if people expect to be perfect, and if they're not perfect, they're going to get yelled at and be told that they don't care, or they're bad, or whatever, then that's such a psychologically damaging thing. So instead, if you get to the point that it's like, hey, it's okay if you mess up, you probably did that because that was on me, that to me seems to free up a more kind of healthy working environment.
Yeah, and I mean, giving people permission to make mistakes is critical, right?
Yeah, exactly. And knowing, like, I'd prefer if they didn't, but also recognizing that, like, it's just, it's as much on me as it is them, And more often than not, I found like it kind of was me, and we just don't want to admit it because, like I said, I'm going back and forth between teaching this person this new dish and then figuring out orders for the wine and then going back and doing payroll, like you said. So like more than likely, I actually did just rush through that and didn't give the amount of time that I should have. So like in actuality, more often than not, I go back and I'm like, oh, actually, it kind of was my fault, you know, really. So being honest about that and you know, recognizing that makes me a better teacher from the beginning and giving everybody a little bit of kind of grace to just kind of work with intention. I think that's another word that I've really liked is recognizing that, like, if people recognize that intentionality is there, then that solves so many problems. That, like, if I know that your intentions are towards following this through so that it achieves what we're looking to do, and my intention is to get you there, then we're already at a safer space to like be communicative and talking and running something really interesting and really great. If the intention is to be, you know, and again, this goes back to that Mateo thing. If my intention is to be hiding things or in some way setting somebody up for failure, then that's already there. It's already baked into the process. Hey, there's the name drop.
Yeah,
hey, there you go.
It took us 50 minutes to get there, but
so I think that to me that's the other kind of ingredient in that.
So as we kind of wrap up, you've described opening the restaurant as a highly personal endeavor, which I think everybody who opens a restaurant feels that way. But has opening the restaurant changed your relationship to food or to the industry in a way that has surprised you?
Not yet. I guess we'll have to see. Not terribly yet. I think that my lesson had always been like get through a full season at a station or at a restaurant, get through a full year, get through all 4 seasons, and then we'll see. So we might have to, you know, revisit in a year or in 2 years to see if I feel differently. There still are like enough just new things around the corner that we're figuring out all the time that it doesn't necessarily feel like that different from week 1 or week 4 at this point, other than, you know, we're able to pay our bills pretty more with a little bit more.
Right, 'cause, I mean, you're 3 months in, right? I mean,
Yeah.
but you're 18 years plus 3 months. So so you come to it from a much more mature perspective.
Yeah, older.
Right. How long? So based on like you mentioned a year or two, like, is that where you think? At what moment do you think you would be able to measure success or judge success of Robin?
You know, I think we've been successful already, and I know that sounds presumptuous, but like I have seen enough faces leaving the restaurant that have really had a great evening and had a great time. And like I think if we go back to that moment of like creating something joyful and creating something beautiful, you know, like niche doesn't exist anymore. Is that make it a failure? You know, like how many places have opened and existed and closed, and like expecting them to exist in perpetuity or for this period of time or whatever feels super limiting in terms of how you view success. So,
I mean, you mentioned Tony's too. I mean,
exactly. So, you know, I think in the same way, like we had pop-ups that were incredibly successful. Like that was a successful thing to me.
So is that I mean, it's interesting to, so new to it. So is your measurement of success the smile on people's faces?
Yeah, I mean, that's it. I mean, that's really it. I mean,
and the ability to pay the bills.
Yeah. I mean, so you know, that's one of the happy things about, you know, the final little bite that we send out is like, as much as possible, I try to be the one that delivers that to the table. Partly just because it gives me a chance to visit the table and say hello and do all that kind of stuff. But it's very much selfish. It's very much a fulfilling thing for me to see that, you know, that hit the table after they've gotten the previous, you know, 4 courses and we've done all their work, and have them compliment, oh my gosh, our server, you know, was so amazing. We couldn't have had a better time. She was great, or whatever. And like that's the fulfillment, and that's the moment where you're like, oh, and then you tell the server, and that's where that beautiful moment happens, where it's like, we know what we were delivering. We know that like the prep that I did in making that chicken, the day before led to that being one of the better ones we've done, which led to this. And then the conversations we had at lineup about dropping breadcrumbs and like all these little things all led to this like dance of service that led to this moment of them having this wonderful 2-hour experience away from, life and politics and this and that and whatever. So, I think from a short term, as long as we keep that happening and we recognize that we have to kind of stay in the moment, that's a successful restaurant. Beyond that, as a business, like I want to be able to, pay off any of our debts, pay our obligations. I want to be able to pay, staff. I want to be able to pay myself. And so far, like knock on wood, we're on track to be doing all of those things. So I think, that's the balance is, I want it to be a successful business endeavor, but the business, to be honest, is serving the first thing. And that's
and if you take care of the first thing, it probably serves.
And that's my point of view, because like that's where, we could go back to the very beginning of this whole thing, but like I'm very much a reluctant business person. Like I'm not a person that's like going to start hustling an energy drink, in the next like year or so because I want to brand, Robin stuff everywhere. Like that's not, in the cards. It was 100% me taking on the business obligations to serve the period of creating something joyful and something beautiful as a hospitality professional in a restaurant.
Right. Well, based on our experience, I think you're knocking it out of the park.
Thank you very much.
I really appreciate, I think the intentionality and hearing more about it and learning about some of the breadcrumbs, I think is terrific. So I really appreciate you spending a few minutes this morning and continued good luck. I think the honeymoon period's got a little ways to go, but.
Well, we'll take it as long as we can get it, but yeah, for sure. Thank you very much. It's great to talk to you.
Thanks, Chef. Thanks so much for joining me today. I can't tell you how much I've enjoyed sharing these insights from folks I truly admire. Be sure and follow the show in your favorite podcast player to be alerted to newly released episodes. And share a comment if you have any feedback or future contributor recommendations.